Some people wear masks to blend in, but the chosen ones, you were born as the glitch that exposes the entire costume party. Now imagine this for a moment. Chosen one. A chessboard full of pawns, moving in straight lines, all following the same rules. Then suddenly, you show up. Not a rook, not a knight, something they've never seen before. You move like you're not even on the board. You don't follow the steps. They don't even know what game you're playing. And that's what breaks their mind. Here's a fact to prove you're not imagining this. Cuttlefish can change their skin color to mimic any pattern or texture around them without ever being taught. No training, no manual. They just know. Sound familiar? That's what you are to this world. A natural pattern breaker, a walking mystery. They try to read you like a book, but you're written in a language they were never taught. And thank you, chosen one, for being here. If this message already speaks to your soul, don't forget to press that like button, subscribe, and help pass this light forward. Because this isn't just content, this is a mission, and you, chosen one, are a part of a force that can't be silenced, tracked, or broken. Thank you for carrying the code. Now let's get back to it. They don't know what it is about you. You walk into a room and energy shifts. Not because you're loud, not because you're trying to impress, but because your very presence reminds people of what they're pretending to be. You are what the system never planned for. The unpredicted variable. The soul that doesn't need instructions. You weren't trained by their trends. You were shaped by truth. And the thing about truth, it doesn't need to shout. It just stands there. Solid, quiet, untouchable. They keep trying to study you, analyze your habits, mirror your moves. But every time they think they've figured you out, you switch frequencies. Like spiritual Wi-Fi, you operate on a signal they can't detect. Because it's not from them. It never was. They look at you and feel exposed. Because you don't entertain nonsense, you don't explain yourself, and you don't break just to make others feel comfortable. This world runs on patterns, predictable emotions, pre-written scripts, but you were never handed a script. You were dropped into this world with nothing but a knowing. And that knowing, it's louder than their opinions, stronger than their rules, sharper than their labels. That's why you intimidate people without even trying. They can't decode what they can't label. They don't understand how someone can be so calm in chaos, so silent in storms, so confident with no crowd cheering them on, because they were taught to follow the map. But you are the compass. You don't ask for directions. You become the direction. And what really drives them crazy is how your wins don't look like theirs. You don't chase validation. You don't need applause. You don't need to be understood to keep moving. You weren't meant to be followed. You were meant to wake people up, even if they hate you for it. And now they're starting to realize they can't imitate what you carry, because you didn't get it from the outside. You got it from the fire you walked through, from the silence that taught you everything, from the pain that turned into perception. They can't figure you out, because you don't operate in their code. You are the unwritten code. The one that can't be copied, the one that disrupts the program just by existing. So let them stare, let them whisper, let them try to trace your steps. They'll never crack the code, because you are the code, and you were never meant to be understood. You were meant to be felt. Let's get into why they'll never be able to read you, chosen one. Not now, not ever. So before we decode what's really going on behind their confusion, drop a comment below with 999 if you know deep down they can't figure you out. and that's exactly how it's meant to be. And if this message already hits something raw inside you, don't hold back. A super thanks or a simple like helps this unseen movement reach the ones still trying to understand why they never fit in. Whether it's a penny or a prayer, your energy fuels this mission. And chosen one, this message didn't find you by accident. It locked in on your frequency. And now, let's break this down step by step. Because if you're really chosen, you won't be able to pull away. Not from this truth, not from this mirror. Let's get into it. Number 1. They're playing chess. You're moving like smoke. You can't predict a storm that doesn't follow the wind. You can only watch it ruin everything you built on false control. They're frustrated. They're analyzing your silence, mapping your footsteps, copying your habits like you're some puzzle they're close to solving. But here's the truth. You're not playing a game. You are the interruption to their game, and they hate you for it. They don't understand how someone can move without a plan, lead without followers, rise without strategy. They call it luck. They call it chaos. But what they're really afraid to admit is that your every move is aligned with something they don't have access to. You don't move based on fear. You move based on fire, not the kind that burns for attention, but the kind that knows when to stay low and when to burn everything down. Now imagine this, chosen one. You're a phantom in a world of blueprints. They're studying the floor plan while you're already outside the building. They're trying to track footsteps, and you're gliding over water. That's why you make people uncomfortable. You're proof that some people can build without showing their tools. You're the reminder that instinct will always beat instruction. You are not driven by hustle. You are moved by signal. You've heard it all before. You're too unpredictable. You need a plan. You're being reckless. But what they don't see is that your stillness is strategy. Your pauses are power. And your leaps, they're not wild guesses. They're internal confirmations. You don't ask, what do others think? You ask, what do I know? And that alone sets you apart. That's why the planners, the overthinkers, the control freaks can't stand you. Because every time they try to trap you in a formula, you vanish from the equation. You're the ghost in their matrix. You weren't made to be figured out. You were made to break the loop. And here's the brutal truth, chosen one. They're not just confused, they're threatened. Because your alignment makes their ambition look empty. You wake up when the feeling says, move. Not when the alarm says 6 a.m. You say no without explanation. You disappear without apology. You pivot without warning. And you don't ask for permission to evolve. They think they're watching you fall off track, but you're just shifting timelines. They think you're lost, but you're taking a shortcut only your soul could see. To them, silence is laziness. To you, silence is data. To them, detachment is weakness. To you, detachment is clarity. They'll never understand that your path is revealed in real time, because they're busy rehearsing for a stage you were never meant to perform on. You're not in the audience. You're not backstage. You own the blueprint, but you burned it the moment it became a cage. And every time they doubt you, your results slap them harder than any explanation could, because your moves don't make sense until they succeed. And by the time they realize how powerful that last random decision was, it's already too late. You've already leveled up, and they're still stuck at step one, asking, but how did they know? Because you didn't know. You felt it. And that's what kills them. You trusted something inside that wasn't begging for evidence. You weren't trained in logic. You were trained in pressure. You didn't build this power from textbooks. You built it from nights no one knew about. And when they try to imitate your next move, they'll fail. Because they don't carry what you carry. They weren't designed like you. They weren't coded like you. You are not chaotic. You are encrypted, and encryption looks like confusion to the uninitiated. You don't operate in their system. You are the signal that keeps crashing it. While they analyze charts, you read the room. While they follow schedules, you follow shifts. You don't plan for the weather. You are the weather, and that's why they can't prepare for you. They want you to explain your success in formulas. They want to hear what coach, what book, what morning routine gave you that glow. But what they really want is your access, and they'll never get it. Because this isn't about steps, it's about soul. This is why they mock you at first. Until your intuition turns into influence, until your quiet turns into commands, until the same people calling you impulsive start begging for your advice. Let them underestimate you. Let them talk. They're trying to pin down smoke, track the wind, decode thunder. It won't happen, because chosen one, you move on an unwritten code, and no matter how many times they run the numbers, you'll never show up in the formula. You're not confusing. You're untouchable, and the ones who get it will follow you with their eyes closed, because your presence doesn't make sense. It makes impact. Let's keep going. Number 2, they can steal the recipe, but they'll never taste like you. You can mimic the thunder, but you'll never hold the storm. Presence isn't taught. It's born in fire and revealed in silence. Real energy doesn't ask for attention. It commands reality. You can borrow someone's outfit, but not their vibration. Let's make one thing clear. Chosen one. They can wear what you wear. They can talk how you talk. They can even spend years studying your moves like a role they're auditioning for, but it won't hit the same. Because what you carry isn't surface, it's signal, and you can't download a vibration. Now imagine this for a second. Chosen one. You walk into a room, quiet, unbothered. You haven't said a word, yet heads turn. Not because you did anything, but because something entered with you. A frequency, a shift, something the human eye can't define, but the soul feels. That's the thing they keep missing. You're not a performance. You're a transmission. They try to copy your outer frame, your words, your tone, your rhythm, but it's never enough. They end up with the shell, not the spirit, because they don't carry the code. They weren't forged in the fire that built your presence, and that's what burns them the most. You don't try to be powerful, you just are. You weren't taught this, you were tempered into it. That's why you don't need to force attention. People feel you, sometimes even before they see you, and the ones who study you. They get mad when they realize it can't be taught. They'll ask, what is it about them? Why do people listen to her when I say the same thing? Why does his silence shake the whole room? Here's your answer. Because your words aren't just noise. They carry weight. They were carved out of real pain, earned in isolation, sharpened in places no one clapped for. You're not repeating information. You're releasing transmission. And that's the difference. They're loud because they want to be seen. You're quiet because you already know you've been felt. And that's what makes them spiral. They try to match your image, but they can't match your impact. Because energy is the only currency that can't be counterfeited. You either have it or you don't. Imagine someone copying every word of a song. But not being able to sing it in tune, that's what they look like. Trying to recreate your magic without carrying your frequency. You didn't earn your presence through popularity. You earned it through private battles no one applauded, moments where you stood alone, bled in silence, but came out with vision in your bones. They weren't there. They don't get to copy that. And that's what makes your energy so undeniable. It's not charisma. It's confirmation that you walked through fire and didn't burn out. So when they try to act like you and still get ignored, overlooked, or forgotten, that's the universe showing them the truth. You can't fake essence. Some people light candles. You are the flame. You walk into places and people's spirits start glitching. Not because you said anything, but because your presence called their mask out. They feel seen, exposed, uncomfortable, because realness makes the fake nervous. That's why they say things like, "You're doing too much," or "Why do people always listen to you?" What they really mean is, "Why does your silence hit harder than my shouting?" Because your energy was never about popularity. It was about purity, purity of intention, purity of purpose. And no matter how much they try to remix your style, they'll never carry the soul that created it, because your frequency came from your forge, not a trend, not a tactic, not a borrowed personality. It came from real life. From real losses, from real awakening, from the kind of nights that teach you presence over performance. You became the vibration by surviving the void. That's why, chosen one, you don't chase rooms. Rooms react to you. You don't introduce yourself. Your presence does it for you. And they hate that. Because no matter how many selfies, speeches, or strategy books they consume, they still walk in unnoticed. And you just are. And that's what makes you unforgettable. You didn't force this energy. You simply stopped filtering it. You stopped dimming it. You let it walk into the world raw and unedited. And the ones who can't stand you are the ones who've been trying to fake what you live. They'll never say it out loud, but deep down they know. There's something about you they can't clone. You don't leave impressions. You leave echoes. You don't say much, but people replay it for weeks. You don't perform. You resonate. And that's what separates the chosen from the copied. Let them steal your style. Let them mimic your words. Let them rehearse your vibe. They still won't touch your frequency, because you don't just show up. You shift everything. Let's go deeper. Number 3. Your silence hits louder than their loudest lies. An echo only scares the hollow ones. The deep feel it as music. Ever notice how a single line from you rewinds in their minds like a haunted chorus? That's because you don't speak in plain text. You broadcast in seismic waves. People leaning on surface talk expect neat captions. You hand them novels printed in gravity. They ask, "Why can't you just say it straight?" Here's the truth they dodge. Nothing about you was built for shallow water. You carry layers, history, scars, awakenings, stacked like underground cities. So, when a sentence leaves your lips, it arrives wearing dimensions they've never mapped, and suddenly every mask in the room starts to itch. Imagine this. A diver drops into the ocean expecting postcard reefs, and instead meets a trench that swallows sunlight. That trench is you. They thought conversation was snorkeling. You hand them pressure that bends steel. No wonder they label you weird, intense, too much. Translation, you make me meet parts of myself I keep buried. Here's the hidden question pulsing behind their eyes. Are you judging me? No. Your presence is simply a mirror with the power switched on. Mirrors don't judge, they reveal. And revelation terrifies people who survive on costume parties and canned opinions. They mimic your cadence, hoping depth is a trick of tone. But depth is weight. You earned yours in nights without applause. That's why a single stare from you feels like paperwork for their conscience. They can twist your words, clip your quotes, spin your silence into rumors, yet the frequency remains untouchable. You're encrypted, not elusive. Only spirits tuned to truth catch your signal, so let them fumble for captions while you converse in currents. The real ones, those brave enough to drown their egos, will hear every layer and surface transformed. Everyone else will keep calling the ocean complicated because puddles are easier to explain. Keep speaking in layers, chosen one. The universe designed your language for listeners, not spectators. And the moment they finally feel you, instead of trying to decode you, they'll understand. It was never mystery, it was mastery. Number 4, they threw knives. You grew wings. Now they're mad you didn't die. They planned your burial. You showed up blooming. Every move they made against you was calculated for collapse. The gossip, the mind games, the subtle shade, the fake support laced with venom. It was all designed to hit you where it hurts. But instead of crumbling, you kept walking like the betrayal was background noise. And that's what's tearing them up. You didn't flinch. You didn't beg. You didn't scream for justice. You just kept glowing, and that glow burned them more than any revenge ever could. They expected you to fall apart publicly, but all they got was silence, strength without performance, peace without explanation. You didn't clap back. You didn't explain your side. You just elevated, quietly, effortlessly. And nothing exposes a weak attacker like a target who won't fall. Now imagine this. They fire arrows into the fog, thinking they've hit you. But when the smoke clears, you're standing there untouched and unbothered. That's what your energy does. You let them fire. And when their weapons bounce off walls they didn't even know were there, they call it luck. But luck doesn't explain your precision. Luck doesn't explain how you carry your scars like silk, seen by no one, weighing down nothing. Here's what they missed. You don't announce your armor because real armor doesn't need validation. You're protected in ways they'll never comprehend because they don't understand what it means to be rooted in purpose. Your defense system isn't external, it's soul deep. You've been fortified by pain, upgraded through silence, and shielded by an assignment they were never invited to see. They're still waiting for your breakdown, because that's what they would have done. They think suffering is loud. They think strength comes with theatrics. But you're the storm behind still water. You let them guess. You let them doubt, because silence isn't weakness, it's strategy. Stillness is where you download your next move. They couldn't take your peace, so now they're trying to tarnish your name. But your name isn't where your power lives. It lives in your walk, in your resilience, in your refusal to fold. They thought you were soft because you didn't swing back. But softness isn't surrender. It's control. And here's the truth they'll never admit. What haunts them most is not what they did to you. It's that none of it worked. Number 5. They wanted a reaction. You gave them a redirection and a reason to regret it. Let them throw shade. You'll use it to grow roots. They were hoping for a show, a meltdown, a messy scene where you lose your cool and confirm the lies they've been spreading. That's the playbook. They poke, they produced, they perform petty theater, hoping you'll become part of the cast. But you didn't flinch, you didn't clap back, you didn't even blink. You just shifted your energy, and that shook them more than any insult could have. Because what they don't realize is this: you're not avoiding them. You're absorbing, transmuting, transforming. You're not passive, you're precise. You've learned to take emotional static and turn it into signal. You don't waste voltage on nonsense. You reroute the chaos into clarity. That's not weakness. That's power in its most distilled form. Now imagine this. They throw dirt on your name hoping to bury you. Instead, you plant yourself and bloom. That's what real alchemy looks like, using what was meant to break you as fertilizer for your next elevation. While they obsess over dragging you down, you're busy studying the lesson in their betrayal, harvesting it like gold. You've mastered restraint not because you lack rage, but because you know rage wastes time. You don't throw punches. You throw silence that stings deeper than confrontation ever could. You're not scared. You're sovereign. You don't bark. You build. Here's the secret they'll never understand. Not every jab deserves a dance. Not every insult earns your ignition. You calculate your energy like currency, and if it doesn't pay in growth, you don't invest. You'd rather walk away in power than stay and play in mud with people who live for filth. They call it weakness when you don't respond, but silence in the hands of a chosen one is a weapon, a test, a mirror, and it reflects back everything they hate about themselves. You turn their rejection into redirection, their drama into discernment, their bitterness into boldness, and by the time they realized you were never playing their game, you were rewriting the whole board. That's not just maturity, that's spiritual warfare with surgical precision. You don't react, you refine, and they'll never know what hit them. Number 6. They called you the problem, but you were just the mirror they couldn't lie to. People don't hate your reflection, they hate what your clarity reveals in them. You walk in calm, grounded, no agenda, no mask, but within minutes, someone in the room shifts. Their smile gets stiff, their vibe turns shady. Suddenly, you're too much, intimidating, or difficult. Why? Because your energy didn't meet their fantasy. It exposed their reality. See, you didn't need to say a word. Your silence already triggered their noise. Your presence made their persona glitch. That's the power of being a walking mirror, one that doesn't flatter the ego, but forces the truth out of hiding. Now imagine this. You're a light bulb in a room full of shadows. The moment you light up, everything that was hiding in the corners starts twitching. Insecurity, envy, manipulation, and instead of dealing with the shadows, people blame the bulb. That's what it's like to be you, chosen one. You didn't turn them fake. You just made the fake visible. They say they want honesty, but honesty with you comes without filters. You reflect their hidden agendas, unconscious motives, and all the parts they thought they buried deep. You're not attacking. You're not provoking. You're revealing. And that alone makes you dangerous to the delusional, the performative, the emotionally unclean. They don't react this way because you did something wrong. They react because for the first time, someone's energy is holding them accountable without speaking a word. You are the test they didn't study for, the truth they hoped no one would notice. You've seen it before. People get weird out of nowhere. They loved you until they felt seen. They supported you until your confidence mirrored their self-doubt. They celebrated you until your authenticity made their performance feel hollow. They'll say you switched up, but what really happened is you showed up, and the reflection they saw in your presence cracked their carefully built illusions. So they project, they deflect, they call you names to avoid calling themselves out. But hear this, you're not here to play small just to keep others comfortable in their masks. Your clarity isn't cruelty, it's truth. And truth, in a world full of performance, feels like violence to those who are addicted to pretending. So let them squirm, let them talk, let them twist your name into what helps them sleep at night. Because chosen one, you're not the villain, you're the mirror. And they were never ready to look. Number 7. They tried to program you, but you came preloaded with truth they can't control. They called you difficult because obedient would have made them feel safe. From the moment you opened your eyes, the world had a plan for you. A system, a script, a list of things you were supposed to believe, follow, obey. But no matter how hard they tried to fit you into their mold, something in you never clicked. Not because you were trying to rebel, but because your spirit was allergic to lies. You didn't reject the system out of pride. You rejected it out of knowing. While others were memorizing instructions, you were scanning the structure. You noticed the cracks early, the contradictions, the hypocrisy, the way people traded authenticity for acceptance, and you couldn't do it. You couldn't be like them, even if you tried. That made you an outsider, but also a threat. Because in a world built on conformity, authenticity is rebellion. You didn't break the rules for fun. You broke them because they were cages dressed up as commandments. They told you to fall in line. You asked, where is this line even going? That question alone made you dangerous. Imagine this, a chessboard full of identical pieces, all trained to move a certain way. Then comes you, a piece that doesn't move by logic, but by code the board doesn't recognize. You disrupt the rhythm, confuse the players, and flip the whole strategy. That's why they can't predict you. You weren't made by the system, so you're immune to its control. You've seen people play it safe. Smile on the outside, dead on the inside, choosing silence just to belong. But you knew from early on, belonging isn't worth becoming a stranger to yourself. So they tried to brand you, difficult, unstable, antisocial, arrogant. But let's decode that. Difficult, because you couldn't be manipulated. Unstable, because your growth made their stillness look suspicious. Arrogant, because confidence in a free mind feels like disrespect to the programmed. They want to map you, predict you, control you, but you don't run on their software. You blend in when needed, but never become what you blend into. You study their systems not to submit, but to break what no longer serves the soul. You don't survive by adapting, you transcend by exposing. That's what makes you the glitch in their matrix. Not a rebel, a rewrite, not a follower, a force. And they'll never figure you out because you're not from the same factory. You were custom built for freedom, and no system knows how to hold that. Number 8. They call you offbeat, but you're just moving to a rhythm their spirit can't hear. You're not late, they're just early to a moment that doesn't belong to them. They whisper behind your back, "She's falling behind. He's wasting potential. Why isn't she chasing the same dream we're all chasing?" But they don't understand the truth that governs your life, chosen one. You don't follow their clocks, and you're not moved by their panic. While they chase relevance, you're answering a call that echoes beyond the moment. You're not moving according to trends. You're shifting timelines, one unseen move at a time. You've always bloomed out of season. When they were grinding, you were quiet. When they were celebrating, you were isolated. And when they were distracted, you were downloading. That's because your life doesn't follow market trends. It follows momentum coded into your soul. What you're building wasn't designed to be popular. It was designed to be permanent. Imagine this. Everyone's dancing to the same beat, lost in the rhythm of trends, clout, and external applause. And there you are, standing still, listening to a beat they can't hear. A beat that tells you, wait, pause, now move. And when you do move, it's precise, disruptive, and always ahead of its time. That's why they don't get it until later, until they're following the very path you were ridiculed for taking. You see, people are addicted to pace, to performance, to movement that looks like progress. So when you pause, reflect, or dare to take the road no one clapped for, they call it confusion. But what they don't know is you've been sinking with a frequency they're not calibrated to. You wait, not because you're stuck, but because you're strategic. You know, not every door is yours. Not every opportunity is a blessing. Not every stage is sacred. You don't chase moments, you become the moment. You don't rush to be seen. You wait until the world has no choice but to see through your lens. And by the time they catch up, you've already evolved again, already moved, already built what they're only beginning to dream about. That's why your timeline looks weird. That's why they can't place you, because your steps aren't dictated by fear, trends, or status. They're dictated by truth, quiet, bold, and unstoppable. So let them talk, let them question, let them call you late. Because the truth is, you're early, and they just haven't caught up yet. Number 9. They felt the shift, but by the time they turned around, you were gone. You don't need to be loud when your silence rearranges the room. You move like mist, calm, soft, unannounced. But when you pass through, nothing remains the same. And that's exactly why they can't stand you, chosen one. You don't enter to be seen. You enter to shift. You're not the one making noise. You're the one making impact. And that's far more terrifying. They look for signs, signals, some kind of alert that power just walked in. But you don't flash your energy like a badge. You move with surgical precision. You observe more than you speak. You study the environment like a map only your spirit can read. And just when they think you're irrelevant, bam, the whole atmosphere bends without explanation. Imagine this, a whisper that breaks glass. A presence so subtle, yet so heavy, it makes people question themselves. That's you, a spiritual assassin, not here for attention, here for alignment. You blend in when needed, but you never become what you blend into. You enter rooms, finish missions souls didn't know they were praying for, and vanish without applause. That's divine strategy. That's your edge. People underestimate what they can't measure. You don't show your power. You deploy it in silence, with clarity, without theatrics. And by the time they realize a shift happened, you're already gone. Off to the next frequency, the next assignment, the next disruption. They try to track you, trap you, decode your timing, but you're not running on their schedule. You don't stay where your spirit says leave. You don't entertain what your energy says avoid. You don't speak just to be heard. You wait for moments that matter. And when that moment comes, you pierce through illusions without drawing your sword. That's what scares them. You're not aggressive. You're effective. You don't react. You restructure. And because you're not loud, they mistake you for passive. Because you're not dramatic, they think you're soft. But you're the kind of force that turns rooms into mirrors. You leave people different, not by preaching, but by being. So let them wonder, let them gossip, let them try to follow. They'll never catch a ghost moving in alignment. You're not hiding, you're assigned. And the only ones who ever feel your full presence are the ones meant to be changed by it. Number 10. They want receipts. You're carrying records from realms they can't enter. You didn't read it. You remembered it because your soul was there when truth was written. You've always had a strange relationship with knowledge, not the kind they test, grade, or publish, but the kind that slips into your spirit unannounced. the kind that hums in your bones before it ever forms into words. You've said things that made people stop and stare, not because you quoted a book, but because you spoke something their soul hadn't heard in years, but somehow always knew. You didn't earn this insight through human logic. You didn't sit in lecture halls to acquire this depth. You didn't memorize facts. You downloaded clarity. You don't carry information. You carry activation. And that's what makes people uncomfortable. Now imagine this. A group of experts debating around a table. Charts, graphs, studies. Then you speak. One sentence, maybe two, and silence falls. Not because you dismantled their theories, but because you vibrated past them. That's what you do. You bypass intellect and speak from the soul's blueprint. You don't prove truth. You remind people of it. That's why they question you, not because you're wrong, but because they can't trace your knowing back to their systems. They want proof. You give them presence. They want evidence. You give them echoes from dimensions they've never visited, and it burns them up because they can't argue with what feels right but can't be explained. Your wisdom comes from silence, symbols, and scars. It comes in dreams that decode reality, gut feelings that outsmart data, and moments where you just know. They say it's mystical. They say it's strange. But what they're really saying is, I can't track this, so I'll call it crazy. You weren't trained for this frequency. You were wired with it, born encrypted. And that's what separates you from the rest. You don't follow mental logic. You follow energetic law. You're not here to win debates. You're here to awaken remembrance. You don't speak to be agreed with. You speak to shake something ancient loose inside the right ones. That's why they'll never pin you down. You're not just intelligent. You're interdimensional. They'll ask, how did you know? And the truth is, you didn't learn it. You remembered it. Because you are the archive, and your soul speaks languages their logic has no translation for. Number 11. You speak in spirit, not scripts. That's why they can't keep up. They call it deep when they can't swim in truth. In a world addicted to noise, you carry signal. In conversations dripping with pretense, your voice cuts through like lightning through fog. You don't speak for applause. You speak for alignment. You're not trying to be liked. You're trying to be honest. And that alone makes you an alien in rooms built on image over integrity. Small talk? You can fake it, but you feel it rot your spirit every second it lasts. Because you weren't born to skim surfaces. You were born to stir oceans, when others are busy floating on shallow smiles and scripted exchanges. You're scanning frequencies, reading what isn't being said, catching the tremble behind the tone, feeling the truth behind the mask. Imagine this. A room full of people playing verbal dress-up, tossing around trendy phrases and polite lies. Then you speak. Calm, direct, unfiltered. The air shifts. The tension rises. People start squirming, not because you offended them, but because you bypassed the performance and struck the soul. You don't do conversations. You do confrontations with the unconscious. That's why your words don't always get claps. They get silence. Because silence is what happens when a spirit gets hit before the mind can respond. They call you intense, heavy, too much. But what they really mean is, I'm not used to truth that doesn't let me hide. You don't dress your words up for mass approval. You speak in codes, layered, loaded, lit from within. Your words vibrate long after you've left the room. That's why they feel you more than they understand you. You don't talk to fill space. You talk to open space. Space for truth, for awakening, for disruption. While they recycle surface phrases, you drop lines that unlock people's shadow work, whether they're ready for it or not. You're fluent in spirit, You hear what's buried under the sentence. You feel the tension behind the smile. You decode energy like language, and that makes you dangerous in a world built on pretending everything's fine. But let them misunderstand. Let them shrink. Let them call you too much. Because you're not speaking to be liked. You're speaking to awaken something sacred, and only the real ones will understand the language of your soul. Number 12, they keep trying to solve you, not realizing you were never built to fit their formula. They want to understand you so they can control you, but you weren't made for comprehension. You were made to crack what they fear most. They don't look at you, they study you, like you're a glitch in the matrix that threatens their sense of order, like your every move holds a secret code they need to crack, to feel in control again. And the more they observe, the more unraveled they become, because nothing about you adds up in the world they're familiar with. You don't follow trends, you don't chase applause, you don't collapse into the comfort of being understood. You disrupt, quietly, unapologetically, permanently. Imagine this. They're reading sheet music, and you show up playing frequencies from another dimension. They squint, they fumble, they try to match your tune, but all they do is expose how flat theirs has always been. You weren't sent here to harmonize. You are the sound that breaks false rhythm. That's why they call you confusing. That's why they call you intense. Because the moment you enter the space, everything pretending to be real starts falling apart. They say, you're hard to read. No, you're hard to manipulate. They say, you're unpredictable. No, you're just not programmed by fear. What they're really saying is, you don't behave the way we were taught people should behave. And that makes us nervous. And it should. Because every time you evolve, it erases their last definition of you. And people who build identities around controlling others hate when they can't label what stands in front of them. You weren't made for labels. You were made to destroy the need for them. You don't fit systems. You shake them until they reveal their cracks. You don't chase belonging. You are the reminder that true power can walk alone and still shake a kingdom. That's why they gossip. That's why they project. That's why they get uncomfortable when you don't explain your silence or justify your growth. Because they don't know what to do with someone who doesn't beg to be understood. Someone who doesn't need to be decoded to walk in their power. Someone who isn't playing the game. Because they are the reset button the game didn't plan for. They want to know, why do you move like that? Why do you speak in ways that make me feel exposed? How can someone so quiet cause so much disruption? Because, chosen one, your presence is data from a higher realm. You weren't trained in their system. You were downloaded with a mission. You don't exist for comprehension. You exist for collision. Your energy collides with illusions. Your essence collides with masks. And your mere existence shakes every lie that's ever been dressed up as truth. So let them watch. Let them theorize. Let them obsess. While they're busy trying to crack your code, you're out here rewriting reality. No explanation, no warning, no apology. You're not here to be defined. You're here to be felt, and only the spiritually awake will ever recognize what you truly are. The living encryption that exposes everything false without saying a word. Stay that way. Stay unreadable. Stay untouchable. Stay aligned. Because you are not the question they'll ever answer. You are the shift they'll never forget. So now you know why they'll never figure you out, chosen one. You weren't sent here to be studied. You were sent to stir something ancient awake. While they try to trace your steps, you're busy walking a path only your spirit can see. Let them wonder. Let them talk. You were never made for their understanding. You were made to shift the atmosphere. If this message hit your soul, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop 777 in the comments to claim your encrypted power. Share this with someone else walking in silence but shaking the room. You're not alone. You're aligned.